4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You are now tapped into the coolest reptile podcast in the world. I'm your boy, MJ. Welcome back to another episode of Trap Talk with MJ. If this is your first time tapping in, what is good? This is a podcast primarily wrapped around reptiles, keeping, breeding, the love, all the above. So if this is something that you're interested in, highly suggest you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you're on top of every single podcast I drop here on this channel. Appreciate all the early birds in the comments. I see you guys right there in just a second. We have a great episode in store. Before we get into today's episode, I got to say today's episode is brought to you by Mark Bailey over at Mark Bailey Reptiles. Please head over to Morph Market, see what's to come with Mark Bailey's productions. This guy's ball pythons production is something not to be slept on. Highly respected in the game, been in the game for quite a while. So I got to say, shout to Mark Bailey for sponsoring the channel and supporting me since day one. Thank you so much, Mark Bailey. I want to say shout to everyone in the early birds who's here ready for a good show. Shout to Big Mike from 1776 Exotics in the building. Trap Talk Patreon member all day, every day. The homie Jake Hole in the building. What is good? Just had his first clutch. Super happy for my man Jake. So shout out to my boy Jake. Trap Talk Patreon member all day, every day. The homegirl Michelle Mosh Balls in the building. Trap Talk Patreon member all day, every day. Thank you for your support. Chantel in the building. Team Zoo Dreams. How's your Super Dwarf doing? She actually has one of my very first Super Dwarf productions I've ever produced. So make sure you'll give her a follow on Instagram. Thank you so much, Chantel. Trap Talk Patreon member all day, every day. The homie Josh B, Trap Talk Patreon member, one of the newer Trap Talk Patreon members. Thank you so much for your support. The homie Deviant Glass. What is good? Trap Talk Patreon member in the building. Heathen Hatchery in the building. What is up? Thanks for tapping in. Trap Talk Patreon member. The homie Triple G in the building. Ryan Hellander. What is good? Ryan Hellander. Thanks for tapping in. Wise Guy Reptiles. What is good? Thanks for tapping in. Serpent Eclipse Reptiles. What is good? Thanks for tapping in. Clown Scientist. What is good? Thanks for tapping in. The homegirl, My Kryptonite Ball Pythons from Canada. What is good? Thanks for tapping in. And I got to end it with the style of my boy Sean Perry over at Sound Serpents, because I know Sean is very excited for tonight's guest, and that's a fact, as I am, okay? Because, guys, I'm not going to lie, I've always been into boas. I think before I even got into the hobby as thick as that I am now, I had a boa as a pet. I've always loved boa constrictors. A lot cooler than a ball python. And I'm not just saying that to, like, throw any kind of jabs out there. Even back then, I was always more intrigued on how a boa constrictor looked versus my ball python. So with that being said, before we get into today's guest, I got to say, guys, little shameless plugs. If you want to follow what I have going on other than podcast stuff, best thing to do is head over to my Instagram, okay? My Instagram is MJ Exotics Cartel with an A, not an E. You can check out whatever productions I have going on and all sorts of other cool projects. And then make sure you go give the podcast's page a follow as well. Trap Talk with MJ Podcast. Much appreciated on the love. And then I got to say, guys, appreciate all my subscribers on my the Snake Trap Sessions vlogs YouTube channel that I have, because I do drop weekly vlogs on my other YouTube channel that's called the Snake Trap Sessions vlogs. Okay, so make sure you head over to that channel. Make sure you subscribe. That way you're on top of every single vlog I drop. Like, for instance, tomorrow, what's being dropped is my facility tour over at Will Morrow's place. Never seen before. And what I mean by that, I put out footage that has never been taken at Will's place before. Way different vlog from anything else. So make sure you guys are ready for that. My boy Will Morrows, one of the heaviest ball python breeders in the game, and really just taking over things, man. It's my boy right here. So just be ready for that. Appreciate all the love and support. And then last but not least, I got to say shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you for all your love and support. If you out there would like to support this channel more than a subscription, more than a like, best thing you could do is join the Trap Talk Patreon family. The link below is where you can do that. You can just click on the very first link and become a Trap Talk Patreon member, which supports the channel and helps me pursue bigger goals that I have for this channel. I got a lot of big things coming. That being said, once you become a Patreon member, you get a link to the Discord, which connects you to over 100 trappers in the building working with all different types of species. You can put stuff for sale. There's stuff available. All the above. It's awesome. Okay. It's very, very awesome. So make sure you become a Trap Talk Patreon member so you can tap into the Discord. And then not only that, finally, what I'm coming out with for all my Patreon members, be ready. I'm finally coming out with my own vlogs for my Patreon members only. That means I'm going to get so raw. Anything that happens in my collection that is not really, not too many people like to talk about, I'm going to be talking about it first and foremost with my Patreon members. Okay, so that being said, I got hit with a crazy prolapse with one of my baby neonate chondros. Okay, and I'm gonna show all my Patreon members what I did personally to fix the prolapse. Okay, at the end of the day, when it comes to breeding reptiles and breeding anything, you're going to run into complications. Okay, prolapses is one of many complications when breeding green tree pythons. Anyways, I break everything down. We go through step by step what I did to fix that. So one of the biggest perks when becoming a Trap Talk Patreon member is going to be getting availability to all this content that won't be posted to the general public. Okay, so shout out to my Patreon members. Just so you know, I'm going hard for my Patreon members. I'm grinding extra just because I appreciate all the love and support, and any super chat as well is mostly greatly appreciated. If you have a question for Vin Russo, get that super chat in and I will greatly put it on the big screen. Okay, so without further ado, let's get cracking with today's episode because I'm very excited. I gotta say, one of the very first books I ever inquired, I'm not somebody who likes to read. That's a dead ass truth. But snakes was something where I had no choice. I had to find out information on these things. And if you want to talk about pre-internet, like stuff that is so easy to get now, well, this is before all that, man. And I just cannot wait to talk to the man behind the book. One of the best, actually the best-selling manual for all boa keepers, and it's about to go down right now. So hope you guys are ready because we have Vin Russo in the building, and it's happening right now.
Good.
You ready for do more in the future? Trap Talk podcasters?
Yes.
Man,
only Trap Talk, exclusive.
Yes.
exclusive. Oh,
So stop calling us.
Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the crop, gotta love it or not. I'm hot from the hop to the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with everybody, we do it. Everybody, we do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up.
and we're live. Vin Russo of Cutting Edge Herps. What is good, my man Vince?
How are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. How do I
Great.
sound? Do I sound okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Hey, Vince, thank you so much. I'm not going to lie. I have a little bit of FOMO because Daytona Reptile Show is going down this weekend, right? I've heard a lot of great things about that show. One show I've yet to gone to, but I'm okay right now. I feel like right now I'm in a good place. I'm not missing it at this point because you're here in front of me. Thank you so much for being here.
You'll be all right. I didn't go either. So
Well, listen, Vince, before we get into things, how's everything going? How's everything on your side of the world? I mean, first and foremost, where are you located? Where are you at in the United States?
I'm in New York. So
Wow.
yeah,
What part of New York?
I'm on Long Island. So I'm like
Ooh.
in the middle of nowhere.
Born and raised, I'm assuming?
Yeah,
That's where
I've been here my whole life. Yeah.
That's crazy. I would have never thought that because, I mean, Boas have been a part of your whole life as well. Am I right?
Yeah.
And New York is like, I hear it's really shitty when it comes to snake laws in New York. I'm curious how that works in Long Island or whatnot. I'm sure it's different in per counties or whatnot.
Yeah, the 5 boroughs, which is New York City. You can't keep boas and pythons, but
Wow.
I'm not part of the 5 boroughs, so I'm all right.
Okay, listen, there's so much to kind of grasp with what you have done, not only for my knowledge behind boas, but just for so many people I've talked to. Obviously, snakes being something to you from a little kid, I'm assuming, right? I mean,
Right.
you've always been around them. Do you herp when you were younger? Like, what kind of relationship were reptiles to you as a young boy and growing up?
Well, as a little kid, I was really into reptiles. I mean, it's hard to explain, but I call it the it factor. You either have it or you don't. You're either born with it, a curiosity,
Right.
or you're not. So as a little kid, I freaked out when I saw reptiles, not like in a bad way, in a good way.
Right.
And I went to camp as a little kid. My mother sent me to sleepaway camp from when I was 7 till I was like 13 or something. And we would go looking for reptiles all day, looking for turtles and frogs and snakes. And, it was just part of my upbringing. And to meet people when I was in, junior high and high school that had reptiles too, that was a big thing, because I was a minority, but I didn't know too many other people that had reptiles when I was a kid,
Right. And that was one thing that I held highly as a kid. I was a kid with a snake. Like I would bring a snake for demonstration on it eating in front of the whole class in like 3rd grade. I remember I did it for 3rd grade, 4th grade, and then 5th grade. I remember like I ran into complications, like it just stopped eating. I was like, oh, okay, this is embarrassing. So I just stopped. But I mean, but one thing is, I always loved reptiles, and I was exposed to reptiles on a whole heavy end of things because, I remember having a relationship to the reptiles. And then my uncle Lloydie back east, he lived in Pennsylvania, when he was, rest in peace. He lived in PA, Pennsylvania, and he had property like acres and was into imports, like wild boars, like mountain lions. He had like all sorts of wild, crazy animals. And then he had his separated house that, I don't know, it looked like it could have been a garage turned into like a studio, but you go in there just covered with snakes. I'm talking those old school wooden, glass enclosures, but everything's rattling, everything's hitting. And I remember being 6 years old, being around, I'm sure everything was venomous. I remember just everything being so aggressive. And I'm talking about like going back there where I'm by myself in that room. Like I was able to open up that room as a boy, and just be like, wow, tapping on the glass. Like some of the most, like, now that I think about it, like, holy shit, like how is nobody watching me? But that's kind of like how I was seeing animals that I knew I would never see back home. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I would grasp that into like zoo magazines. So I just had this connection to animals that were always the next level stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I never got brought into it until I was a lot older, like I am today. So I'm curious, with you, I mean, one of the biggest things I want to talk to you about, tonight is how you're able to sustain being not only an author on how to breed snakes, but like doing snakes for a living in general, which was one of the hardest things to do pre social media. Like it's a lot more common now. People are doing it now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it wasn't easy back then. And I'm just curious how your upbringing with these animals turned into a business.
Yeah, well, I was in the business world for many years. I was a mortgage banker. I worked on Wall Street. And the whole time I've been breeding snakes since I'm 15 years old,
Right.
So it was always I would call it a hobby. And I was saying to somebody just today, I feel like I was the luckiest guy in the world because I turned a hobby into a business
Right.
30 years ago, and
that's like a pioneer type thing. That's like a hello, like
yeah. Well,
not easy.
the way we started was my brother and I had a reptile shop back in 1987. And that was like right out of high school and college. And we the only thing you can get back then was wild caught reptiles. So I would weed through the wild caught Boas, Guyana Boas, Suriname Boas.
Right.
And I would keep a bunch of them in anticipation that I would raise them up and breed them eventually. And eventually I did, and I noticed right out of the gate that these captive bred and born babies were worth far more than those wild caught clunkers that we were getting out of the wild. So I saw a need for it in the industry. And this was in the 80s and early 90s.
Wow.
So, I had a regular job after a while because my brother and I split up from the store.
Okay.
And I remember getting to the point in my regular job that I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to kill myself in the corporate world.
Amen.
I'm passionate about snakes, and I've got a snake business that, in the beginning I was selling animals in the back of magazines. There was Reptile Amphibian magazine, there was Reptiles magazine, there was Vivarium magazine. where you could post ads, and you would mail people a picture of a snake, like snail mail, U.S. mail. They would call you on the phone, and you would mail them pictures of, the parents of litters of boas I had. And that's how I started the Cutting Edge Herpetological. I started that sometime in the early 90s, and I incorporated it in the mid 90s. And I got into snakes full time in 2000 when I got out of the mortgage banking business, because I saw that collapsing.
Right.
And I figured if I put as much time and effort into my snakes as I did my banking world, that I could make a living at it. And luckily I had a supporting wife who was like, yeah, let's do it. And it's discipline and longevity. You can't, boas aren't something you get into. And again, I'm not knocking ball pythons, because I breed ball pythons. I've been doing them for 35 years.
God bless the ball pythons. That's my foundation. Right. I will never knock the ball pythons.
Right. I make plenty of money on ball pythons.
Right.
But it's like they're an easier venture. You can make money faster, quicker with them. You can breed females faster. You can breed males pretty young. I mean, some guys are doing them in 6 months old. Boas you can't do that with. Especially the true red tails. I mean, I've got true red tails, some of them 7, 8, 9, 10 years old before they have a litter.
With the world full of shortcuts, meaning like there's almost anything you can almost take a shortcut with what you're trying to do in life. A lot of it doesn't have good results. But one thing I don't like about the ball python's house, you can almost get away with taking shortcuts. And some of it's not good, but like, for instance, like I love the fact that I work with other species that takes 4 or 5 years. Not that it takes, but it's better if you wait that long. Let them get mature. Right. Like there's no rush. And with the ball pythons, it's always a rush, because there's always someone making something cooler, and you don't want to be left behind.
There's always a race.
And it's not on purpose. It's just a part of the ball python game. Like it comes, even if you're not even trying to be someone in the race, you're in the race. Like mentally, you're in the race. Your collection, the money you spend, anyways. So I drew that drew me away from that. Like I wanted something that was going to make me like earn it more, and the boas, I'll tell you what, man. Well, first off, the first 3 years I tried breeding boas failed. Okay. Meaning nothing ever happened. Okay. And which I'm glad, because this year I got my first litter. Right. And it all went as planned, all as what your book said finally. Right. But at the end of the day, from what this is another topic we're going to talk about, is just the myth buster behind breeding boas being such a traumatic experience for the most part, meaning females, there's a high percentage of females dying after litter, or babies not eating, IBD, the list goes on, so I didn't want to go as full in with boas like I did with the ball pythons because of that, and even when I had this gravid female that laid for me earlier this year, I had people in my ear saying, oh man, good luck with the babies. For some reason, all mine died. And not that they were like trying to, hate, but they were just giving me their experience. So I want to know right off the bat, like, I mean, was there a shit ton of trial and error, or a lot of dead babies for you in the beginning? Like, what was this all about? Like, I want to hear it from you.
There was a lot of trial and error. I wouldn't say there was a lot of dead babies. There was a lot of trial and error. But I will say this, that now that I do it for a living, and I do have a good number of litters every year, every year there's a litter that's what most people would consider a catastrophe, whether it's a female that dies gravid, or whether it's a female that spits out a bunch of dead babies and then dies, or spits out a bunch of slugs and some dead babies. Every year, out of all the litters I have, there's at least one of those, maybe two. And I've learned that those don't happen by accident. There's a reason for those, and it's always a lack of thermoregulation, meaning the female couldn't get enough heat, got too much heat. Something went awry with the heat on that snake. Something happens. It could be a female that just didn't thermoregulate herself properly anyway, like didn't go on and off the heat. I always attribute it to something to do with the heat, always. So I've learned that I create an environment for them which is conducive to them thermoregulating properly. And the more I do this, the more I'm figuring out, how to accomplish that in my building. So, but you're right. There's always going to be And think about it. If you're a younger breeder or a guy with less snakes, and you only have 2 or 3 female boas, and one of them completely slugs out or drops dead, you've lost a third of your production for the year. For me, it's a drop in the bucket. It's I always count it up as, all right, well, that one wasn't meant to be, on to the next one. That I can't make every single breeder in the building a pumping out baby machine. It just doesn't happen. That doesn't happen with boas. It happens with ball pythons,
for the most part. But even when we're talking about numbers, like there's certain snakes that just won't breed sometimes. Like it's just part of nature. Like, I mean, you can't.
Definitely.
Yeah, but like you said, for the most part, 9 out of 10 times, every ball python is going to do the job, and that's why I love my ball pythons, Vince. I worship them. I'm not gonna lie. Like
depend on them.
They get the job done, man, and like they're the biggest reason why I was able to fucking say fuck my 9 to 5 over a year ago and go all in on this. Podcast was a big reason too, but without the ball pythons and that first year income I had, and then the second year to back it up, like you know what I mean? That's why I always keep them relevant, but I will never be concerned about wanting to be on the top end of that game, because it's like, holy shit, what is the top? It's impossible. I've visited so many collections at this point where like I get overwhelmed, like how deep the ball python, the triple recessives, the quad stuff, like it's, man, it's kind of like how I almost missed the 90s and the 80s and like prefer simpler shit. I'm not gonna lie, like I like the simple times, man. Like I remember talking to the old elderly guys when I was younger and how they just miss simple stuff, and I never understood that until I'm at this age now. And like, not that I don't appreciate technology, trust me, it's awesome, but like imagine the suspense and excitement of going to your mailbox, having a look at these photos of these snakes you really want. Like that must have been a day. Like you probably made a whole day out of that,
Well, I did the same thing that you were just talking about. The ball pythons are what got me catapulted into full time, meaning in 2000, I produced the leucistic ball python, the Russo leucistic, and that popped up serendipitously in a pair of normal snakes that were siblings.
Right.
So, well, they were a little more yellow than a normal snake. But when that happened, I realized now I can take the next step and I can do this full time, because I can bank on breeding those ball pythons and making money enough on them to pay my bills to get through. And then hopefully the boas will catch up. And that's basically what happened, And before the ball pythons, it was Burmese pythons. In the 80s, everybody was breeding albino Burmese pythons. Everybody.
I mean, there was, I forget, Barchek, one of Barchek's very first snakes, like his big purchase was an albino Burmese, I think, and it was like $18,000 or something like that. It was stupid money. Like one of the first. I could be wrong on the morph, but Burmeses back then were such a crazy prized possession to have. Am I right?
Yeah. Back in '87, I bought a pair of Burms, an albino male and a het female, from a guy that bought a pair from Bob Clark and paid. Shit, I don't even remember what he paid. He probably paid $4 or $5 grand, something like that. And he sold them to me for half of it because he just needed money and the snakes were getting too big. So I got lucky and I raised them up pretty fast and bred them at a year and a half old and produced 30 snakes the first time, and half of them were albinos. And by the time I produced them, they were $1,200 a piece or something like that. I forget the exact numbers. This was late 80s.
Right.
And I remember buying a car. I was like, wow, I made enough money to buy a car.
Wow. And that's crazy how quick your life could change after so long of just putting in work and letting things happen. And again, it's like stars have to align for you, man. Not everyone has this kind of luck. Like I feel bad. I hear stories of some people, like, I mean, you really don't know really what kind of keeper they were, but you just hear how it worked out for some people and then some people not so well, and I don't know. I just feel like it just the stars have to align for you, man. A lot of it has to come down to luck. I don't know.
Well, luck has a lot to do with it, but I think also discipline and doing something constantly has a lot to do with it too.
100%. You need that.
Yeah. If you're the type of person that thinks this is, get rich quick and,
It's such a hands-on thing. Like you have to be hands-on. And if you're somebody, I mean, no disrespect on how people run their collection, but like I've talked to some people who won't go in their room for like 5 days. And I'm like, why? Like, what do you mean? Like I'm in there every day. And then that leads to like, you know, at minimum once a week water changes. Like what? You give your snakes fresh water once a week? Like I remember even as a young keeper, like, you know, doing a water change the next day, seeing shit in the water. And I'm like, well, I better change that right now. Like, you know, fuck this technical, like, oh, once a week. Like that doesn't work like that. Like you go as is. And I always had that as a, you know, no matter what the rules were, you know, I started realizing it's like, if you have a sense of something that's going to better the animal, just do it. You know what I mean? Like, and I had no problem with that, which leads me to my next topic, Vince. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I can't really say this for the boas quite yet, but I feel like for the ball pythons, one thing that's really pushed on keepers is having a 90-degree hot spot all the time and temperatures. I always felt like these temps that are being told to us, especially like stuff out of like Google and stuff like that, like I feel like most people are overcooking their animals. Am I right or am I wrong?
100%. You know, it's funny you bring that up because I talk about that all the time with people.
Right.
I was just talking about it with a friend of mine because I breed a lot of colubrids too. I breed pine snakes and bull snakes and
cooler
snakes.
Animals.
And people cook the hell out of those things. I mean, they literally cook them and they don't like it. You know?
That's why they're angry. That's why they're pissed. You know, so you understand you got some Boega species that are just like the most pissed off thing in the world because they're being cooked. And one thing that I realized too is because I had a big group of short tails for a while, and this is back to where my husbandry was like 90-degree hotspot for everything. Oh man, that did not work for them. They were just, I was like, why are they so pissed? And I remember telling one of my good buddies at the time who was really deep into the short tails, he's like, dude, you got them way too hot. Like, and once I adjusted that and did things, they changed. They became a whole different animal. I was able to just pick them up. And I'm like, whoa, like what a difference. You know what I mean? So, I just can't stress that enough, you know?
You know, the first time I went to Ecuador to find boas, it was the middle of their dry season. And the dry season is usually a little cooler than the wet season. It's not, again, you're on the equator, so it's not that much of a difference in temperature.
Right.
But I remember I always brought hygrometers and thermometers with me just to see what's going on over there. And one night it was below 60 degrees, like 59 degrees in the Amazon basin. You know, it was below 60. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool for what I thought was a tropical rainforest that was 85, 90 degrees all the time, but it's not. It's not. So those snakes, they don't mind getting cooled down a little bit at night, but they need to get warmed up in the day again. They need to bask under, you know, the sun or a heat pad and get their body temperature back up again. But they're little solar panels, those snakes. They don't need a lot of time to do it. They can do it in literally minutes, you know, or an hour. So I learned a lot from traveling that these snakes in the wild are not exposed to these constant hot temperatures that people give them, you know. So it's one of the reasons why I think I might be successful in breeding a lot of the stuff I do, because I give them very seasonal changes, and there's very specific seasons where it's cooler and drier, and there's very specific seasons where it's warmer and more humid. So they need that.
I mean, it's seasons, literally. It's, you know, giving them the dry, hot stuff and then the wet, cool stuff. You know what I'm saying? And I'm starting to realize that too. You know, I'm in San Diego, Vince, so everything's ambient for the most part.
Right.
And I realized with the hot spot I even left for my boas, dude, none of my boas are even on the hot. The only time my female went to the hot spot when she was like about to lay, like she was like on her like final week. And then I saw her finally laying on the hot spot, and I was like, oh wow, you know, that's crazy. She finally went to the warm side. And it's, I don't know, like, it's like you said, there's nothing that's very straightforward in the wild. Everything is like this, you know, the food intake, the temperatures. I mean, you even have some snakes that literally have no food to eat for months. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that goes to say, like, one thing I also feel like is necessary, and one thing I feel like you have to do with boas, correct me if I'm wrong, But one of the safest things you should do after a female lays is giving that female the year off the next year, right?
It depends on the female. It depends on, for
Tell
me,
me how.
it depends on which race. There's 3 races of boas: Boa Sigma, Boa Imperator, Boa Constrictor. Boa Constrictor, they give birth later on in the season, always. I mean, they're spring breeders, so they have their babies late summer, almost fall. So there's no way you could feed them enough to breed the following season. It's just not going to happen. You could try, but you're wasting your time. Right. So, snakes like that, I don't even bother. But for example, the Sigma and the Imperator, if they're smaller snakes that had small litters, because most of mine do, and they're eating properly, eating well after they give birth, they probably could go again. Some of my smaller island type snakes, like I have a Cape Cocker boa that's had 7 litters in its life, so that's like my record, 7. But I don't have any call albinos that have done that. I don't think anybody does.
And remind me this, what boa species is the call again? Can you remind me?
Imperator.
Imperator, okay. And Imperators are the ones that get the biggest, correct? Or am I wrong?
Well, Constrictor gets the biggest.
Constrictors, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
But the actual boa constrictors isn't commonly worked with nowadays. Is that right?
What do you mean?
Like the actual boa, because the actual original boa constrictor, like you're saying, that's the biggest species of boa, right? Like those are the ones that get pretty gigantic, and I don't see too many of those.
No, that's the true red tails. A lot of people can't breed them. People that keep them, they feed them too much. They keep them too hot. All the stuff we're talking about.
Fuck.
It's the same. You have chondros. It's the same thing with chondros, and I always call them chondros, even though they're no longer considered chondro. Green tree python. I call them chondros too. People keep them too hot and feed them too much, and wonder why they prolapse.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I talked about it on my vlog that I'm dropping from my Patreon page, but I mean that prolapse was my error. I mean, at the end of the day, that snake was eating great. It was doing everything it should have. I fucked up. And I won't tell you how I fucked up. You got to go join the Patreon for that. But at the end of the day, it was me that caused the prolapse, and I know it. But that's it's one thing because of where we're at in this fucking day and age, Vince, is so many of these mistakes that are made constantly, and especially for years after years, we're starting to figure out why this is happening. You know what I mean? Right. And for the most part, overheating, overfeeding, you just fucking neglect to what is really needing to be provided to these animals, and that's just like shit just being natural. But here's the thing though too, Vince, not too many people, like, especially where you live, you deal with some crazy winters. Like you get hit with some fucking straight ice cold fucking winters, right? So are you I'm curious for somewhere, because where I'm at, right, my ambient is like naturally drops throughout the year. It goes up, so I feel like I'm in a good place, right? But what are you doing for your ambient? Do you switch that up at all? Is it the straight ambient throughout the whole year? How's that being ran to this day in your room?
I'm at the mercy of what happens outside, meaning if it's a really hot summer, my warehouse is hot. But I keep it below 88. I don't let it get above 88 degrees, meaning the ambient. That's like really hot.
It is hot.
And boas don't like it above 88, 89 degrees. They just don't like it. You can tell that they're just not comfortable. Ball pythons are fine with it. All the guys in Florida that breed ball pythons, they keep them 90. Their buildings, they don't even bother air conditioning their buildings.
It's funny you said that. I was just at a building and nothing was wrong with it, but I was in the room and I was like, what the fuck? How hot is it? It was 90. It was 92. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, God damn, bro. Like my room never gets over, like, ambient wise. It's never over 86. Like during the summer, the peak is hottest point of the day. It's going to be 86, and that's good. Yeah. That's if the AC's, and I have the AC going too. You know what I mean?
Right.
But a lot of people out there, like you, they really rely on to what's heating up their room and what's providing heat in their room during the coldest part of the year, because without that source of heat that you need and it's super cold, nothing's going to breed. Am I right?
Right. Well, again, in the heat of the summer, my building is warm.
Right.
In the winter, when it gets cold, it could be 5 degrees Fahrenheit outside.
Right.
I have a an overhead gas-fired heater that, keeps the building at around 72, 74,
Okay.
which that'll be the ambient temperature. So for my snakes to go from 72 to 88 in the summer, 72 in the winter, that's a pretty big swing. That tells their internal clock it's the winter, slow down. We're not really eating this time, of year. We're taking it easy. And, I don't feed for literally 6, 7, 8 months out of the year of my snakes. And a lot of people think I'm nuts, and I'm not feeding them in the coldest part of the year, but I'm feeding them in the warmest part of the year, because in the wild, that's what happens.
So you're saying basically, because for instance, last year I paired mine up in October, I think. And, that's when courting happened pretty quickly. And then next thing you know, he started locking. But my female, even after she fucking ovulated, she still ate. And I was confused by that, because, ball pythons, once the ovulation happens, it's done. But I was been told by some of the people who were kind of grooming me at that time, like, yeah, go ahead and feed her if she wants to eat. So, I mean, at what point of the year? I mean, so meaning once your boas are locking, and because you have boas paired up in around October in the winter, I'm assuming, right?
No, I go later, because it's still not cool enough yet. Again, I'm at the mercy of the weather, and it's funny because I ask people that have litters of babies in like April. I'm like, my snakes are just starting to breed in April. So
wow.
I use what's going on outside to my advantage, because if I didn't, I'd be paying a lot to heat a building at the wrong time of year. You know what I mean?
Right.
So once the building starts warming up is when the females start ovulating, and they give birth in the hottest part of the year. So, and when they are gravid, I don't feed them at all. I don't feed them anything.
You don't feed them
Once
at all.
they start pairing up, I don't feed them I start pairing like in December. So I don't feed them from December till they give birth, which is usually in July, August, September.
I mean, when you finally stop pairing a male, at what point, I mean, where's the female at? Does she had already ovulated, or at what point do you are able to remove the male? And
once they ovulate, the males come out, and it's very obvious when they ovulate. I mean,
it's humongous. Yeah,
you can't miss it.
My girl was like, I couldn't believe it. It was humongous. I was like, holy shit. It was pretty impressive.
So the males come out, and then the males I'll feed a little earlier because they'll need it. But other than that, the females don't eat from December to June. So that's 6, 7 months. They don't eat anything. And I don't feed them when they're gravid, because sometimes they have problems passing that meal past the babies. Again, boas are opportunistic feeders. They'll eat anything.
They'll just keep eating, right?
Yeah, you could offer them their food. They'll eat it. Is it going to create problems? It might. That's just my opinion. I mean, I know plenty of guys, just like you said, have had gravid boas that eat and give birth and have babies, and everything's fine. But I've seen females stressing, trying to poop, and they have difficulties if they're gravid. They're getting that waste past a certain point in their body. So I learned a long time ago not to feed them.
I think at the end of the day, like, you could avoid a problem that doesn't have to be a problem just by not doing it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. They don't need any food. They've had enough food. If they're pregnant, they've had enough food in their feeding season to develop eggs past the point that they can be fertilized and become babies. That's their only job. So they don't need food after that.
Right. So let's kind of talk about something that a lot of people go back and forth on in that's keeping certain boas, as far as establishment goes, on mice before getting them on rats. I mean, what is your preference when it comes to that? Like, you start your boas off mice and then eventually go to rats at a certain age, or how do you work that?
I breed a lot of mice, so the mice for me are what I feed everything when they're young. So all the baby balls, boas, everything that I create eats small mice, hopper mice right out of the gate. And then once they're, that's probably for the first year or two, they're eating mice. And then once they can get to the point where they can eat a rat, then I start feeding them rats. That could be 2 or 3 years. So, I don't think, a lot of people say, oh, you got to give them rats because there's more fat on a rat or whatever, or who knows. To me, fat is bad on boas.
That's what I'm saying. You don't want with boa, you want to go the opposite. Like
Yeah.
they retain a lot of fat. That's the one thing about boas when it comes to the difference between boas and ball pythons digestive, how long it takes for them to digest a meal. You know what I mean? Boas all around are just a slower species as far as digestive goes, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Boas did not evolve digesting fat. Pythons evolved digesting fat. That's why pythons can eat pigs. That's why pythons can eat big birds like ducks and geese.
Right.
Boas eat in the wild. Boas eat iguanas, and they may eat small birds and rodents. They do not eat pigs.
Right.
I mean, even guinea pigs have a lot of fat, and boas do not do well on guinea pigs at all. There's too much fat. They literally shit out a stick of butter after you feed them a guinea pig.
They probably love it, but it hurts coming out.
Yeah.
So for the most part, your breeder males are on what? What's the biggest meal you're feeding a breeder male?
Maybe a medium rat. Not even a large rat.
Okay.
I keep the males small. I keep them so they fit in CB70 trays, and if they're constrictors like true red tails, they're in division boa tubs. But other than that, a big male to me is a waste of space.
Yeah, you don't have to have a big male. There's definitely ways of and I'm lucky to my male that got the job done for me this year. He's not big at all, man. He's hungry all the time. Don't get me wrong, but he stays smashing, and he's stays perfect in one of those I forget the numbers, but one of those smaller freedom breeder tubs, and
right.
I'm happy with that, and but I'm curious with you coming through your experience breeding boas. Obviously, you're back from the 80s. I can't imagine the setups that you had, because I mean, you didn't have really rack systems back then, right? How did you have everything like set up with your adults and whatnot?
Well, I was a carpenter for a while when I was young, so I was building
huge
building these big cages with sliding glass doors with shelves in them. And
wow.
I had a pretty elaborate setup with those infrared heat elements, there's ceramic heating elements and fluorescent lights in them. And, so I figured out pretty early that they needed to thermoregulate, and they needed a hot spot and a cool spot. And so the problem with those is you couldn't really move them around. They were too big, those cages. So when racks started coming out, I started building racks. That was like in the 90s, early 90s, mid 90s. And then when Vision started making, Scott Solstead started making the Vision racks, I ended up, I have some Vision racks from Scott that look nothing like the ones he commercially was selling later on, because they were his like prototypes that he sent me.
Damn.
They're made out of aircraft aluminum.
But you still have snakes in those to this day.
I still have them. Yeah, they still got snakes in them.
That's fucking epic.
Yeah.
Now, how did that work for you, or what did you notice as far as production wise when you went from having those old school glass door cages to breeding them in tubs? Because you still breed in tubs to this day, right?
Oh yeah. The tubs hold humidity far better. Those
Okay.
glass fronted cages, most, again, this is my opinion. I don't want a cage guy coming on here saying Vin bashed my cages. But for me, a glass fronted cage, a big open glass fronted cage, is hard to hold humidity in. But some of the newer ones that I've seen out there, they're I guess PVC plastic with plexiglass fronts on them with some ventilation holes. Those may hold humidity better. I'm sure they do. But for me, it was very difficult to keep humidity in those glass fronted cages, because they're not really sealed up very well, and you just lose all the humidity you had. In the tubs, it's much easier to have a humid season and a dry season.
At what point in your career did you realize how important humidity was to boas?
I learned that was the first time I bred boas when I was like 16. I mean, I realized that they bred when there was starting to be more humidity. Because again, I'm in a northern climate where the friggin' winters are ice cold, and then the summers, the spring comes and the house is warming up, the snakes are warming up. I'm creating more humidity by misting them down because they're dry from my dry house, and then all of a sudden they're breeding. So it's like maybe that has something to do with it.
Right. That's pretty wise even at that age for you to realize that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm only knowing this shit because I'm hearing it out of people's mouths, and I'm not gonna, one thing I am figuring out are like some things that are just like do the right thing by the animal if you can, right? Like fuck what people say or what a book says. If you know you can help the animal better, do it. But I mean, I don't know. Like sometimes I just have to hear it, and for you to just be able to figure this shit out or put 2 and 2 together at a young age, man, respect to you. It's awesome. I have friends that I hold really close to in this industry, Vince, who started in this game like yourself, like breeding at 14, 15 years old. Now they're like 23, 22, but their knowledge, because how long they've been doing it, man, fuck. I feel like I'm talking like a 50-year-old sometimes. Like they're just like guys who've been doing reptiles since a young age and continue that on through their 20s. They're a different breed. They're a different type of human. And I love that. Like that's one thing I'm starting to realize. Don't get me wrong, there's still shit stains around, but at the end of the day, the ones who are the ones that are in this for the good reasons are the good to have around you. You know what I mean? So,
well, I had an advantage as a kid because when I was really young, I was breeding tropical fish, and I even was breeding. What? Yeah, I was breeding fish. I bred cichlids, I bred angelfish, I bred discus, and I was breeding parakeets just for shits and giggles, for fun. And
at a young age, even at 15, 16, or how old were you?
Younger.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, God bless your parents.
I belonged to an aquarium society when I was like 9 or 10, and I got the breeder award for the most breeder points for breeding fish.
At 9?
Like 9 or 10, yeah. And wow. What I'm getting at is I learned at a really young age that the fish bred on food, meaning if you fed them a lot and changed the water a lot, they would breed and have babies. And the birds were the same way. The birds were in the spring when the days got longer. If you fed them oats and hemp seeds, they would stop breeding and lay eggs. And that I learned from another bird breeder. But it's like you learn that the seasonality for birds and fish is no different than for reptiles.
Exactly. And it's so funny you say that because I just had a monitor breeder on not too long ago, and like what gets monitors to breed? You stop feeding them. You basically fucking fast them. You calm down the heat for a while, and then you spike everything up
and you slam them with food.
And you slam them, but like like it's crazy. Like what's crazy, Vince, is the people who are most successful at this. It's no joke how they go from 0, nothing to extreme feed. I'm talking about feeding till they're just like, I'm good. And for whatever reason, that much of an intake is what spikes everything to happen. Right. They're not fed like that all the time. Don't get me wrong. You know what I'm saying? But there's just that spiking moment that is so crucial to any species in reptiles. It doesn't matter what it is. It's all the fucking same. And same with birds.
Birds and fish.
I mean, it's like, man, overthinking this becomes rocket science. It doesn't need to become rocket science.
Think about this, and this is what I learned about when I was in the Amazon basin. You have a dry season where the water level drops to almost nothing. Now there's fish, birds, and reptiles everywhere. The rains come, the heat comes, the humidity comes, and the water levels raise. And all the fish, all of a sudden, the water is encroaching into the forest, and there's bugs and food everywhere. So the fish are gorging themselves. Mm-hmm. So what's happening is the birds are eating fish. So they're gorging themselves because there's more places to go. The capybaras are swimming around, and the iguanas are getting closer to the water, or they're above the water, and the boas are starting to eat them. There's this natural, cycle that is creating, like you're saying with the monitor guys, they go from famine to feast, and it's that feast that triggers their eggs to develop, whether they're a fish, a bird, or a reptile, to reproduce. Now, in the wild, that may only happen every couple of years, or it might happen every year. But there's going to be a season where there's nothing to eat, and it's cool and dry, and there's zero around. Then all of a sudden the rains come, and bam, there's food everywhere, and they don't know what to do with themselves. Look at the crawl K boas, or the K Cocker boas, or the Pearl Island boas. They live on an island where twice a year migratory birds land on the island to get water from the trees and their leaves that catch rainwater. They go there for a drink, and the snakes eat the birds. They gorge themselves on birds. They may eat for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, and then they don't eat for another 6 months.
See, and that's the kind of, like, you can't really put a schedule on that. Like, that happens as the seasons come along. You know what I'm saying? And that's why at the end of the day, knowing your animals is so important. Like spending time with them, seeing like, okay, maybe she's not going to go the same time she went this year, or you know, just being able to see that change, because that's happening in the wild, you know. So I don't know, I think everyone, you know, it's I commend anyone out there trying to put information out there, you know, but as soon as I hear like someone giving instructions to a new keeper on how to keep anything, on how it needs something permanent 24/7, and no reptile needs anything permanent 24/7. You can't do that to it. You know what I'm saying? You want to talk about the first killer of a reptile is going to be stress. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it shutting down. And I don't know. I feel like the biggest, and it's kind of like double-edged sword, because I'm in YouTube, right? But the biggest push for this hobby is also going to be the biggest downfall. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of the information is misled. A lot of the most praised people on here are the most piece of shit people in the hobby. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and they're the ones on news channels and fucking collaborating with rap stars and all. And it's like, no, like, not these guys. Like, these aren't the ones, but it's turning into that. And, you know, I try not to dig too deep on the reptile YouTube channel scene, but as soon as I did, Vince, I ran into so many channels that have fucking misinformation. And I'm just like, what the fuck are they talking about? And they have like 62,000 subscribers. And it's like, what's like, man. So I don't know. Like, you know, at the end of the day, this all stems from me wanting knowledge, but I hope to God this what I have going on just continues to spread to people who don't have the knowledge yet, because everyone at the end of the day wants right by the animal, right? And if it wasn't for people like yourself and other people who've been through the mistakes and seen the trial and errors, like, you know, what we're doing now is helping the animals. You know, it's not putting it under a fucking red basket. Natural. Yeah, like that's more natural. It's not bioactive systems with fucking plants and fucking, you know, goddamn frogs jumping around. Like, nothing against that, but people think like, oh, you can't have that many snakes unless you have that for all your snakes. Like, you need to give them natural waterfalls. And it's like, do you realize how happy these snakes are in a rack system? Like, they get everything they need. Like, here's one thing, Vince, that you could probably back me up on. Like, I understand people who like to take their snakes to shows and education, but there's no snake out there that likes to be held. Are you kidding me? Snakes don't want to be fucking interactive. They just want to be left alone. Some will tolerate it. You know, you have snakes that live and age and they're just like, okay, what are we doing? But I can tell you right now, and I'm not that snakes talk to me. This is just going off a whim. I'm pretty sure that snake's so happy when it's left alone and it's just eating, digesting, drinking its water, not being killed. I don't know. I don't know. Did you ever were you ever big on that? Like, did you ever educate like schools and take these big boas in front of kids and stuff? Like, did you ever do any of that?
You know, when I first started doing this in the 80s, my aunt was a 3rd grade teacher, and she asked me, can you come to my school and bring some snakes? And, you know, we brought a Burmese python just for kids to go ooh and ah. And we brought a turtle, a horned frog, you know, there were no bearded dragons yet, but a skink. And we only did it just to help my aunt out. But as far as doing those shows, that was it, you know. And I'm the same way. I don't handle my snakes a lot. I know which ones are going to try and bite me and which ones aren't. But for me, they do better without, you know, constant handling. But don't get me wrong. There's plenty of people out there that like to walk around with their snake and hold their snakes, and that's going to be part of this industry too. What we got to understand
Yeah, I mean, I see how people. I understand how it makes people happy at shows. You know, I see it. I see people walking around with their first animal, but understand like why the ratio of so many people buying their first animal doesn't go well was because of the introduction that animal's getting from the show to your house. You know what I'm saying? So it's also like, oh, look how happy that that person is. And yet that snake's on their head, and they're just walking around. They're like, I got a new snake, everyone. It's like, fuck, like someone tell this person.
Yeah, I don't agree with people at shows walking around with snakes. Number one, it could be dangerous. I
mean,
it's
like you can't be mad at that person because you got to be mad at like all the other hundreds people doing it. It's like it's kind of like, oh man, it's a cringy thing of the shows, but at the end of the day, it's just what brings people together. And I don't know. I had so many like habits that I only knew because I thought that's what you had to do. Like, man, I over fucking fed the shit out of my collection. I thought if the snake wants to eat, that's good. That was my mentality in the beginning.
It must be hungry.
It might, yeah. Why not? Like, yeah, and like that just wasn't it.
People humanize their snakes.
Yeah, that's the problem in America. We're all fucking obese. We're all fat. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's kind of just like taught me so much to where, a lot of the people, like the person putting a snake on their head, they're just that was me, dude. Like I was probably that person that just didn't know better. Like if I remember, I don't know. Some people just aren't aware of the real situation on what's going to be better for that animal until they are really tapped into this. So I don't know, man. I think at the end of the day, this hobby, no matter who's getting into it, is getting bigger and bigger.
Oh, I've
growing.
seen it. I've said this before. I've seen it go from nothing to a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that's in the 40 years that I've been witnessing it. Like I said, when I was in middle school, I met a kid who came up to me and said, "Hey, you want to see something cool?" And he had a Burmese python in his duffel bag, and that was the first kid I met that had a snake, other than me. And it was like that was 1982 or 3. So
wow.
It's like back then there was nobody had snakes back then, and when you met somebody that had a snake,
it was the coolest thing ever.
They were thought of as like an outcast, an oddball, some weirdo,
And I love that.
I saw it go from we were underground and we were outcasts to now it's
now people want to be you.
Yeah, reptiles are in Petco.
Wow, how the tables have turned. Let's talk about when that breaking point hit where you were actually getting that kind of income off the snakes, where you're like, okay, hold on, I could fucking do this now. Like, I don't like, I see it. At when did that happen?
Well, sometime in I guess the mid 90s, when I had purchased my first home, I created a pretty big reptile room in my basement, and I was selling stuff on Reptiles magazines and stuff like that.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
And I remember telling my accountant, people are writing me checks for $300, $400, $500 for snakes, and I got to start claiming the income. So we incorporated my business, Cutting Edge Herpetological, and that's when I started, paying taxes on my income and writing off mice and rats, and made a business out of it. Even though I had a regular job during the day at that point, it became a hobby business that was making money, and I legitimized it by incorporating and filing a tax return, and from there it grew every year. Every year I made more. So I got to the point where I was like looking at my tax return for Cutting Edge Herp and my personal, and I'm like, wow, they're almost the same. Maybe I'll just keep going to the Cutting Edge Herp side,
Right. Man, I've met guys, Vince, to this day. I won't say any names, but one of my closest friends in this game, I mean, he has a healthy salary. Don't get me wrong. He makes a lot of money, but God damn it, dude, he could fucking triple that with the collection he has. Like, he has some powerful shit, and he knows he has it, but it's just that turn, like saying fuck the security, which he has insurance, he has everything good for his family over there. So he's like, I don't want to let that go. And technically he's like 10, 15 years from fucking retiring, if not more. And the guy's like, he's not fully miserable, but there's times where he just does not want to go to work, and he hates it. Like, he literally hates it. And when I hear that, like, I feel for people like that, because, you know, I haven't lived a life like that in almost 2 years. You know, yeah, I have my days, but still, like, I work for nobody but myself. It's the best thing on earth. But like, some people, even if they see the numbers, they still rather not go that route because they don't think it's steady. And here you are taking that turn for, I mean, how many years now have you been full-time snake breeder now?
22 years.
And even to this day, it's only increased, like, or did you have a certain year that you made the most and it hasn't peaked at that point?
No, it keeps going. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Now, what about production wise? I mean, has your production been increasing throughout these years, or are you kind of like being smart about that? What's going on with your production, the volume behind your production?
The production has increased as far as the percentage of females giving birth has increased.
Wow.
So, you know, 20 years ago, you know, just using round numbers, if I had, you know, 100 ball pythons, I would get 40, 50 clutches. Now, if I, again, using round numbers, if I had 100 ball pythons, I would get 97 clutches, you know? Mm-hmm. So the numbers have increased that way. The efficiency has increased. I've also increased the number of breeders that I have, obviously, over the years. I'm constantly adding more females to the herd, so to speak, especially on the boa side. I'm doing more and more boas every year and less of the other stuff.
Right.
Because those were more time consuming for me personally. But I mean, there's no secret. You either have the balls to say, fuck it, I'm gonna do this for a living, or you don't.
It's plain and simple.
Yeah.
Because it comes down to personality. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's yeah, I don't know. Some people, listen, America was built off that fucking 9-to-5 person. The corporate America is what this country is built off of. But there's not too many people who will fucking do it themselves, you know, and that takes a different breed. That's a different breed, man. And I'm glad I'm one of them. That's all I got to say. Fuck working for anyone else. That's all.
Yeah. I haven't worked for, you know, I say to my kids, I'm like, you know, I don't take being told what to do very well. That's why I'm self-employed.
Right.
You know, because my kids will say, oh, I went to work and my boss told me to wash the dishes today. I'm like, well, that's why I'm self-employed.
Right. Now, let's talk about some of the projects that really kind of like, you know, for instance, my biggest, you know, recipe, I would say, in my boa projects are the blood boas. Like, I'm obsessed. Like, fucking your book, you know what I mean? Brought that to my eyes for the first time. When did you stumble across that project, and when did you know you had something like fucking like next level? Like, what year was that?
Well, you know, I didn't stumble upon it. It was Ron St. Pierre that found a bunch of blood boas back in the early 90s.
That's right. I remember.
And the first one I saw was at, you know, the Daytona show this weekend wasn't always in Daytona. It started in Orlando. And the very first show was in 1990, I think. It was at a Howard Johnson. It was a little tiny hotel.
Wow.
Across from the Twin Tower Hotel that it eventually moved to. But anyway, when it was in the Twin Tower Hotel, I think it was probably mid-90s, 95, I'm going to say. A guy, Jeff G., who's the originator of the orange tail boas, who's also a tortoise breeder in Arizona. He was at the show, and he had 2 blood boas for sale at his table, and they were like 10 grand a piece.
No way.
And I was like, what are these? Did somebody dip them in Kool-Aid? What's going on? You know, what is going on with this? You know? Mm-hmm. So they looked fake, but they were obviously real. And then I didn't see them for a couple of years. They kind of like disappeared. And reason being that Ron St. Pierre sold the project and got out of them. And they got, you know, dispersed into the wind, so to speak. And then they popped up again. I know Tracy Barker and her husband, Dave, had some. And I ended up buying a male from her in, I'm trying to remember the year. It's probably late 90s, somewhere around there. Maybe 2000. And that male I bred to everything. I bred him to a pure orange to hypo that I got from the Jeff G stuff. So I wanted to keep them pure Central American because the Jeff G orange tails were pure Central American. Bred them into T positive Nicaraguans, and started working with them from a single male. And just bred the reddest snakes to the reddest snakes to try and get it to the point I'm at now. This year, I produced some really, really red snakes. I mean, I open the drawers and I'm blown away. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
And what are all going to be at play at these snakes you're talking about? What's all in them?
Blood traits, you mean?
Yeah, is it just blood, or are there like a bunch of different combinations in them? Like what's
they're just blood or hypo blood, either one. They're
just so many bred. It's just bred back so many times the higher end stuff that this is what's happening at this point.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm at the point now where I'm just blown away. And I also popped up some blood boas from some hypo Nicaraguan boas that I got from Ben Siegel in 2000.
Wow.
And I popped them up in 2015. So 15 years later, I finally bred two that were hets to each other, not even knowing that the blood boa trait was in these things, and produced blood boas from a normal Nicaraguan boa bred back to its son, who was a hypo Nicaraguan. So half the litter was hypo, half was normal, of which a quarter of them were blood boas.
Right.
And I raised all those up, and I bred some back to the original Ron St. Pierre bloods, and it's allelic. It's the same trait. But this year I bred a bunch of those to each other and made some smoking blood boas out of them. I mean, like, I haven't taken pictures of them yet because I'm like, here's one of my problems. You've seen my snakes at the shows. They're really red.
They're nuts.
I take pictures of them, and some people think they're fake. The picture's fake, or you did something to the picture. So people have to see them in person to pick them out, because taking pictures of them is difficult.
And that's happening even with certain ball pythons now, man. I mean, I was just at my buddy Will Morrow's house in Canada, and he's posted some of these snakes, but it's like, holy shit. There's these DG and other stuff like puzzle and whatnot. Like it in person does not have any justice on the phone. And but also with the bloods, like I'll never forget being at your table, listening to you talk, and just being memorized at what you had displayed there. And I was like, dude, these are red. These are fucking red. And I don't know if you remember when I finally realized who you were. You remember when we talked for like,
you were like,
hey, you're like, whoa, wait. I told Brian Cusco that story, and he was like laughing. He's like, you're too much. And man, I had a moment because that was my first Tinley. I was by myself, like just
you were like running around.
I was like having the time of my life. Like I felt like a fucking kid, like, because normally I have a bunch of people with me, but I was literally alone, and I was like, just finally talking to people and just having a good time. And man, I remember just putting two and two together and looking at you. I'm like, you're Vin Russo. Like, holy shit. And then I was like, can you please come on my show? You're like, yeah, I'll come on your show, man. Here's my business card. And that was like one of the highlights of my Tinley. I'm not gonna lie, man. That was a good time.
Thanks.
So going back to you making an income with this, obviously the ball pythons became a part of the formula here at some point, right? Has the ball pythons ever came close to what you're making with boas yet? I mean, how's that on your scale?
For a while it was like 50-50 balls and boas, but I'm taking the direction of doing more boas purposely, not because they make more money, but because I feel that that's what I'm known for and that's what I'm passionate about. And the older I get, the more time I want to put into the things that I enjoy better. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy the ball pythons, but I just do less and less of them every year because I'm like, all right, they're ball pythons.
Oh man, I feel like I'm just like, I love my ball python, especially because my hatchings, my whole goal is, like I said, I'm staying relevant in my own world, right? So what I'm hatching, I'm happy that what I'm seeing, right? But if I didn't need them, like I always thought, like, because here in this room, this is my podcast room where I keep all my boreal stuff, like all my prize green trees and my emeralds, everything's in this room. And I just sometimes sit back, especially after a podcast, right? and I have all these fucking chores in the goddamn other room, I just sit back and I'm like, imagine if I just had this. Like, I was like, wow. Like, I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. I love that other room. Like, it keeps me busy, but I know at some point, Vince, I hope to God I'm not at the mercy of the ball pythons. Like, I hope I could just be like, yeah, I have like maybe 10 clutches a year, but I'm not shooting for fucking 50, 60 clutches. You know what I mean? Like, I would like to just keep things all on a minimal basis, but I'm all happy, in a sense, I would like to, but at the end of the day, I'm at mercy.
I've said this before, on other shows. To me, these different races of snakes are like stocks. Now, I told you I worked in the banking business and I worked on Wall Street. Stocks, some of them perform better than others. So every year is a little different. Like the last couple of years, people were investing in colubrids like black Mexican king snakes and pine snakes and palmetto corn snakes, scaleless corn snakes. Those were hot, and I make them, and people were buying them. So that stock was up. Then you notice that some other things are down. Like this year, skinks are down. Their stock is down. Not a lot, but it's down.
Right.
So every year I look at it like stocks, And for me, ball python stocks are good. They're excellent. But then my portfolio I'd rather fill with boas. That's just the way I look at it.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's your bread and butter, I feel like,
Yeah.
And I mean, as much as like anyone should, in a sense, if you can, it'd be smart to have some good ball python stuff if you knew what you're doing.
Exactly.
But also stick to what you're good at. You know what I'm saying? And that's why another reason why I was smart at the time, because I could have easily bought more boas. I could have gone that route, but there was something in me that just I didn't feel comfortable. I was like, I feel like I have this ball python stuff down more. So I rather make sure my feet are wet and comfortable here. And even though, like I said, 3 years, nothing happened with that adult female. And then finally, boom, it happened. And that's like, of course, if you are only trying to hope on one pairing to go, I mean, it's all numbers. Like, it comes down to numbers at the end of the day. And here I am working with one fucking pairing or two pairings of boas versus my 40 fucking ball python pairings. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, if you really want to see results, you have to get into the numbers. And I just wanted I wanted some success with the boas first. And trust me now, bro, my boa collection's getting up there. I'm obsessed. I gotta tell you, okay, listen, it was my wife's birthday dinner. I was literally on my way, all freshed up, ready to go, which, I'm a snake keeper. I never get freshed up. I hardly ever get freshed up. So here I am all freshed up, ready to go. And I go into my room, and what do I see? Fucking live fucking baby boas just everywhere. It looked like Alien. I was like, whoa. I was like, not ready for it, because I've only had experience with these clutches, and the eggs. But, I wasn't too sure when she was going to drop. I was just kind of like, I knew it was going to happen. And so, oh man, I'll never forget the feeling, man. It was like a whole nother level. It was literally like cutting my first clutch, but it was just different because now, like, okay, now these snakes are born. Like, there's no incubator. There's no, like, it's clean them off, put them in the fucking, it's like straight from one point to the next. And, I remember not even being stressed about, being late for dinner. I was just so happy that I had a new taste of something. Like, it was a whole new taste. And I'm not gonna lie, man, the live litters, bro, that's where it's at. Something about those litters. I don't know.
I trust me. I know the feeling. I have it all the time.
Awesome. I mean, no, because I had trial and errors with incubator, and incubation, incubating stuff, that's you rely on a fucking machine to get the job done at the end of the day, and things could go wrong where, with boas, they do all the work. And, it makes you love your female more too, because God for you, she does everything, so, wow, I just got to say, I'm chasing that more. I mean, hope it doesn't end up biting me in the ass, which it probably will at some point, but I love it. I mean, that was just this is why I tried to, I don't like to say the word preaching, but I try pushing this so much to where if you're good at something, right? Like for instance, you're good at boas, but wanted you to dabble in something else. And what I'm saying is, like, there's a lot of people who are really good at breeding ball pythons, but that's all they do. They're just happy with just doing ball pythons. But I feel like if you can learn and get something else done in a hobby, especially in a days like today, why not? Like, it actually kind of sparks something in you. I feel like when you kind of challenge yourself and work with something else,
Oh, definitely. I pride myself in the fact that I bred pretty much everything that that's in the pet industry now. I've had them and bred them. I mean, I've bred blood pythons, tree boas, you name it. I've bred it at one point. I want to come up with like a list so I can keep adding to it, so I know, you know. So I just feel that to be a reptile breeder, you can't just do one thing. You have to spread yourself out. And for me, I take pride in the fact that I bred, you know, a lot of people can't breed green tree pythons, and I breed them almost every year. Not the same ones, but I have green tree pythons almost every year. And there's not too many guys that can say that. You know, there's not a lot of guys, even, you know, Rico Waldo, when he was doing it, he was the most successful guy I knew at it. And he didn't have success all the time, you know? So,
I mean, think about like a guy like Rico. His legacy was like, you could go to a show and you go to Rico's table, all chondros and emeralds.
yeah.
You don't see that nowadays. That's impossible.
No, that
Nobody
doesn't
had it doesn't exist. And so I was only able to see pictures of this shit. I never got to meet Rico, rest in peace. But you know, my good friend Forrest Fanning, who also aren't here with us no more, rest in peace, Forrest Fanning. He fucking would tell me so many Rico stories. And like the way I like look up to Forrest kind of looked up to Rico the same way, like with his just stories and just understanding on how important this guy was at that time and even to today. Like having stuff out there, like, man, I would love to do a show, Vince, but at the end of the day, like, I don't want to go to a show to make money. I want to go to show something I'm proud of. Like this is fucking, who has this many chondros that they bred at a, you know, at a table, like all, and I don't, none of it's for sale. Just look at it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
just
fuck, what a feeling. Like, I gotta say, man. Now I gotta ask you this: what year was it when you really started working with other shit? Like, I know you said you eventually you bred green trees and tree boas. Was this at a certain point, or was this just scattered throughout, you know, you just being in the hobby?
I've been doing it the whole time. I mean, it's so funny. I'll go to a show and I'll have, you know, green tree python or some skinks or some, you know, Sumatran black short tails. And people are like, man, I didn't know you have these. Like I've had, like my Sumatran short tails I've had since 1991. You know,
wow.
And children's pythons, you know, a friend of mine's like, oh, Vin, where did you get the children's pythons? Those are nice. I'm like, the first pair I got in 1987. I still have the same bloodline, you know?
Wow.
So I've been doing it the whole time. I just don't advertise I have them much because, again, this to me was a hobby that turned into a business. And I kept it the hobby because that's what kept it fun for me. I didn't want this to be a factory. Well, I didn't want to be a puppy mill, you know. I wanted people to buy a snake from me and be like, wow, if you get a snake from Vin, it's going to be properly sexed, it's going to be what it's supposed to be, and it's going to eat well and it's going to thrive because I do this full time. The snakes weren't neglected for 5 days and, you know, left, and then I fed them a meal and shipped them out the next day. So it's like I'm on top of things all the time. So it's like I wanted to take pride in the fact of, you know, I'm a snake breeder and this is what I do.
This could touch home to a lot of people, and I want to just hear it from you, man. Just say it how it is. How often are you like going on vacations and like doing stuff where you could leave the house? I mean, do you have a crew that you rely on at all, or is this just completely raw dog, just fucking you doing all the work? Like how's that being delegated?
I'm like a one-man show. So, you know,
that's intense.
I don't, number one, it's hard to trust people with your animals.
Impossible.
Yeah.
God, you have to sacrifice. Like, that's the thing. Like my wife, bro. And, you know, I travel once a month, Vince, to do a live show at somebody's place, but I only have a good show, meaning a peace of mind, if my wife's the one holding back, watching my stuff. And because she's just as into this as I am, and she sees it and she knows what's important, and when I tell her this needs to be sprayed, this needs to be looked at, she'll take notes. And everyone else I've had do that never takes notes. And I'm like, dude, like I was like, and I'm not trying to tell them how to fucking remember things, but you're not gonna remember this shit. So that means, you know, I never have to worry about coming home and seeing a snake without water or something. Like, dude, that my wife's check. But she's the only one, Vince. So it's sad because I want to take my wife to Justin Kabelka's place and, Marshall Mendez's place and all these, Bill Steagles. But I can't, babe, I'm sorry, you need to stay. And it's sad, but that's the only way I could leave. And I just can't. I don't know, man. As much as I
haven't gone on a long vacation in a really long time. I mean, I used to, before I had kids. My kids are 18 now. Before I had kids, I would travel the world. We went to South America. We went to Europe. We would go to Hawaii. We'd go to Australia. We went everywhere. And what I would do back then is my brother. I have a brother, like I told you in the beginning. We had a reptile shop, so he's into reptiles. He would come and take care of my stuff for me. And he kind of does that now. If I go away for a weekend or if I do something, my brother will come and help me out. But other than that, since the kids are around the last 18 years, I haven't done anything.
And how much is the family involved with what you do? I mean, are your kids have they ever been like little helpers for you? Or
if I didn't have my kids help me out, I'd be in trouble because they, in the spring they'll come and do all the water bowls or change out all the baby Boas water bowls for me, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and help me with the rodents. And so, they definitely help me out, my kids, and my wife does too. So I'm there every day. I mean, I'm at my warehouse every day. There's not a day that I'm not there. I can't just not go there. I've got to be there every day.
And what's the commute for you? Like what's your average commute as far as how long it takes you from your house to your warehouse?
It's close to my house, so I get there pretty quick. And
it's on your property, or do you rent it? Like, how's that? Like, where?
I rent the warehouse.
You rent the warehouse, okay?
A commercial warehouse, yeah. That's the only way you can really do it here in New York. I mean, the number of animals I have, I can't keep in my home because the garbage, the regular garbage pickup wouldn't be able to handle it.
They're like, what the hell?
Yeah,
it's all this rat shit and fucking
rat shit, mouse shit, snake shit,
all the above. I'm not gonna lie, man. There's things die. I'm not gonna lie to you. At the end of the day, you fucking have things will die. And I remember just kind of putting stuff in the trash. Like, God, I hope no trash guy sees this. This is gonna, they're gonna be shocked. I don't know, man. It's I'm glad I don't have nosy neighbors. I don't, I'm in a place where most people, I have a buddy, shout out to Matthew Summers, I'll say his name. He has to be careful when he takes a snake outside to do a story because his fucking HOA doesn't allow so many exotic animals. And it's like, what? And he owns the house. And it's like, I'll be damned if I fucking own this house and I can't take my snake outside and do a fucking video. And it's like, but that's just how it is on all these new properties in California. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's a shit show.
Yeah. I moved it out of the house once it started getting big. And, you just can't have hundreds of snakes in your home. It doesn't work.
I mean, it's very dicey doing it, especially when you have kids. My wife has always said, have you ever considering, because she knows how big I want to go in this, not massive, but bigger. And she's like, wouldn't you ever consider renting something? And I just love waking up, rolling out of bed, even if I'm butt ass naked. I could just go to my room. I could just go to because I forget a lot. And there's just things that I'm like, holy shit, why didn't I do that? You know what I mean? And the fact that I could just roll out of bed, like I said, and just do it and just, oh, fuck, thank God I remembered. Dude, I have natural instincts that wake me up hey, I think something's loose, and I'll wake up and I'll literally see something loose. And I'll be like, wow, I'm glad I woke up.
You know what I had to do when it was in the house? This was the problem. When it was in the house, it was 24/7.
Yes.
Okay.
That's me right now, man. Nonstop.
And then when the kids came, it was like, all right, now there's a whole nother responsibility here.
Right. Oh, we got a guest caller. Who is it? Mark Bailey?
Hold on. It's my daughter.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on the show. What?
Legendary. Guys, while he's on the call, get the likes up. I get a lot of good likes, but let's go and get the likes up. Great episode. This is awesome. Legendary stuff. Legendary. Shout out to everyone in the comments.
I'll call you back.
Live chats. You guys are awesome. No super chat. You got a super chat for the homie? Come on, let's go. Anyways, how many dogs you have?
Two.
What's their ages right now?
They're twins. They're both 18.
Wow. Okay, twins.
But what I was getting at is when the kids came along, there was a lot of work involved with kids. So I had to move the business out of the house, you know, and then it became a 9-to-5 thing. And that was a good idea, because then it became a real legitimate business. Like, this is what I do. This is where I'm going for the day. And then when I leave, I'm home and it's all left behind. So,
and you know, at the end of the day, like, these snakes don't need 24/7 fucking like, you don't need to supervise them 24/7. You could systematic do it, like, to where it all works in a flow. And that's a really good point. I feel like, you know, I don't have kids yet, right? But if I do have kids, I'm gonna want to have time for the kids. You know what I'm saying? And you have to delegate that very carefully. You know, family's everything. You know, so
right.
And I'm not. And my wife's very. Man, I remember in the beginning, she had a tough time when I would just be eating dinner and I'll drop everything, go to the room, and I'm gone for 2 hours. Like, she didn't understand that. And it's only because I would be like, hey, I got to check on something. And then I would see a whole shit other things I had to do. And I just get caught up. And in the beginning, she did not like that. And now she tolerates it. But even now and then she'll come in and be like, hey, are you, like, you know, I'm over here still. You know what I mean? But when there's kids involved, it's a whole nother level. You know what I mean?
It really is.
Yeah, because now they depend on you. They depend on you. Fucking the same way the snakes depend on you feeding them and raising them. Now you have a kid.
Right.
You know what I mean? Whole nother level. The kid that's actually talking to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I'm glad you said that, because that's definitely something for me to consider when that time comes. But then again, it would have to be all right. It would have to be something close to my house. You know, some people drive like 45 minutes an hour. I wouldn't want to do that. Like,
yeah, well, you know, my ultimate scenario, you know, where I live right now, I always wanted to build a building on my property to put the reptiles in, but the town won't let you do that where I live. Most towns won't let you do that. Right. So, you know, when I eventually, when my kids are done with college and stuff, and I eventually move, the next place I get is going to be a house with a barn on it or a big garage where I can put my collection in it. So they'll be on my property. And that's what I'll do. That would be like chapter 3 for me, so to speak. I'll probably scale it down a little bit, not as much as it is now, and make it a little more of my Noah's Ark, Vin's Ark, you know. More
like a getaway towards versus you know, you slaving away, which
and again, I want to travel again. So I mean, I've really put a lot of, you know, I don't want to discourage people, but you can't go on vacation for long when you have a big reptile collection, like we were saying. So
I got all, like, you know, I got a little heartbroken. I was at a good buddy's collection of mine about a year ago, and you know, I'm looking at his snakes, and he's telling me how he wants to basically be like retired, like all the way around retired in the next 5-6 years. And I'm like, what? Like, dude, what? Like, no, because you know, 5 years is gonna go by quick. You know, I'm realizing that. But he's like, dude, I want to live, man. Like, I can't. He's like, I can't leave my house more than 3 days. Like, you know, like, and that's because he depends on people, and sometimes that doesn't go through. Like, there's just so much that keeps you from living life. And you know, he's already, like, you know, in his 50s and shit. So I see it, and I'm like, wow, like, I'm loving this so much. And like, Vince, I haven't been breeding since I was 14. You know, I've been in love with snakes, but this is all new to me. I've been doing this for 5 years. So to me, I just feel like there's no end. I feel like I'm going to die doing this, and I'm okay with that. But you got people on the other end of the spectrum who've just been doing this for so long to where they've never really got to live life. They never got to go fucking disappear for 2 weeks, see what it's like, you know?
Right.
Like, and that's a whole other way of living life. Let me just say.
Yeah. I'll never get out of this ever, because this is something I'm passionate about, and it's something that I'm successful with. But I need to get it to the point where I can start doing what I want to. Forever, I was looking for an apprentice, and there's no such thing. You know, I can't find. I was paid the highest compliment by Eugene Bissett when I wrote the first book in 2006. He came up to me and a bunch of other people, and we were in Daytona, and he said, you know, I know a lot of people that do this. He's like, I've yet to meet the next Vin Russo.
Wow.
Like, he's known me since I'm 17 years old. And when he met me, he was like, wow, this guy breeds snakes and he's 17, you know? And meanwhile, Eugene was the pioneer of breeding snakes. He's one of the originators of commercially breeding snakes. And he's saying to me, oh, I've yet to meet the next Vin Russo. So I personally have yet to meet the next Vin Russo, because when I meet him, I'd say, you could be my apprentice. But it's at this point, it doesn't exist. There is, I can't find the next person to teach and take over and do the next thing. So,
well, this kind of goes back to just like, you know, being able to work for yourself. It takes a different breed, man. So on top of being that type of person and working with what you work with, man, there's only one Vince Russo, bro. There will never be another one. I mean, and that kind of goes to a lot of other people who've made a big impact in the industry. There's not gonna be another fucking Brian Barczyk, another Kevin McCurley, like, you know, Tom Crutchfield, all these people. Not to say that they're all innocent or shit. I'm just saying, like, these are all people that will never be repeated. Like, they've all done something crazy in this game that can never be done. But that doesn't mean that somebody else can't come and do something else differently, or, you know what I mean? And I feel like, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's sad to think that, you know, do you think as we continue on, people are going to want to overlook writing a book? Like, you know, I mean, let's think about it. Some of the most, you know, looked upon books are books that have been written out for a while. Like, there's nothing new that's coming out or anything current that people are really like talking about or happening. Or, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but.
No, you're right. Even with my book, when I first wrote the first book in 2005, it wasn't published until 2006. I sent a book proposal to a number of publishing companies, TFH, I forget the other ones. There was a bunch of them. And all of them sent me a letter back saying, we already have a book on boas. You know, like TFH, Tropical Fish Hobbyist, had a book, Know Your Boa. It was written by a guy who wrote books about fish. So it's like, what does that guy know about boas, you know? So again, they were like, oh, we already have this. We don't need another one. So it wasn't until, you know, Eco, our friends, Bob Ashley.
Shout out to Bob Ashley.
You know, I saw him in Daytona in 2005. And I'm like, Bob, I'm thinking about, you know, publishing a book. Here's my proposal. He's like, yes, well, let's do it. Definitely. Like, there was no question. He was like, we're doing a book on boas. So
awesome.
That was the next thing. And that was, you know, that book came out, and to this day, people think that I was, you know, writing about not feeding your boas so that they wouldn't breed them. And I'm like, no, trust me. Read the book.
Now, you know, I can't help to stop thinking that you said that you're basically a one-man show. So let's be honest. The real ass kicker in this fucking game is breeding your own rodents. That's not easy. Like, that's the grunt work. And luckily for me, I got into breeding rodents right off the bat. The first 2.5 years I bred my own rodents, and that was the biggest pain in my ass. Like, it wasn't doing the snakes. No, it was fucking every Sunday I had to do rodent chores. Like, no matter what it was going on in my life, I had to do rodent chores. Couldn't skip a rodent chore day at all, because if you did, you're going to pay for it. So, I mean, I'm curious, how big is your rodent production right now? Like, how many mice and rats do you have going, and what are you doing to sustain this right now? Like, I'm just curious.
Well, the mice, I only breed mice to make hoppers to feed all the baby snakes. Once they get past a certain point and they eat defrosted, then I feed them defrosted mice. Okay. So I have about 60 tubs of mice, and each tub has a male and 4 females. So those tubs, when it's not too hot, we'll probably pump out 200-300 hoppers a week.
Wow.
So thank God I don't have to buy hopper mice, you know, and I use more than that probably. And rats, I don't do a lot of rats. Maybe 12, 15 tubs of rats, and
everything's just to feed your collection. You're not doing anything to like sell to other people. Like, it's
I'll never do that. And my mouse colony is solid as a rock. I've had it for I've had it since 1995. So what is that? 27 years. It's the same mice. I haven't changed them. Haven't added anything to them.
Or have mice been a lot harder to breed versus rats? Or
the mice for me are really easy. You know, I know people have trouble with mice. Right. And for a while I was, you know, selling a lot of mice to friends. Like, hey, you want to eat a tub of mice? You know, keep some and breed them. You know, when I'd have surplus, which is not that often, but I tried spreading them around, and people still had trouble with them even though I don't. So it's
Yeah.
I think the problem that people have with mice is they don't keep them clean enough.
Right.
I clean them twice a week, the mice. The
Wow.
rats don't mind being dirty. They're kind of dirty creatures, but mice aren't. Mice like it clean.
Yeah.
So
More
and
high
I buy
maintenance.
frozen rats and I buy frozen mice too, big mice.
Right. So I mean, what's the I don't know, one thing that I always felt that was important, or I took pride in when I was breeding my rodents, was the feed I was giving them. I used to feed Missouri feed. I mean, is it important to you what goes into your rodents? Do you have a strict diet for them, or?
Yeah, there was a diet out here on the East Coast called Harlan Teclid food. It was developed by a scientist for research facilities. And you could buy it at one point. You could get it, and it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't really expensive. If you bought it by the pallet. So I usually would buy it by the pallet. But the problem was they started getting a higher price, and then they didn't want to sell to the public any longer. So I had another feed company take the recipe is proprietary, so they couldn't get the exact recipe. But they took the basic recipe and tried making a copy of it. So that's what I use now. And I usually get about a pallet of every month or two of that. And that food I've had no issues with. So I use that probably the last 15 years.
And do you have what kind of water system do you have? They're in tubs. So you have, like, I'm sure, like those, how do you run water for them? I'm curious.
I don't. Everybody's got an individual water bottle.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
they're in the very old school type breeding tubs that with the metal racks, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they're not old school. They're got metal tops, but the feed hangs on the top, and the bottle goes in the top. The reason why I do that, my wife worked for a few large animal facilities in the pharmaceutical world, and they never use watering systems simply because if one cage gets a bacteria or disease or a virus, the whole system gets it.
Wow. That makes sense.
The only way to avoid it would be by constantly pumping antibiotics through the water all the time, which is not good too. So all laboratories use water bottles, individual, and the water bottle is for that exact cage. It never gets changed to another cage.
Right.
So I use water bottles. I fill them twice a week, and that's it. But, I spend a lot of time cleaning the rodents. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to. I mean, I feel like that's what, like you said, I feel like the reason why you probably do good with the mice is because you are so on top of it. I feel like cleanliness has a lot to do with it. Maybe not with the rats so much, but even with my rats, like I said, I made sure I had to get the rat chores done on a Sunday, no matter fucking what. Like, I remember at that time too, like I worked so much at my 9-to-5 job where my only day off was Sunday. And even that Sunday, guess what I was doing? Rat fucking chores. Yep. So it's like, I didn't have a choice, but I remember because my animals, like the only way my animals are going to sustain them growing and being good is if I have the healthy rodents. But then also too, I took pride in the rodents I was breeding. I was seeing some really beautiful rodents, and I was like, because there was even a guy I worked with who was dropping live feeders, and I noticed some of his feeders didn't fucking look right, and I was just like, well, what's wrong with this thing? And so when I started breeding my own, I just felt like, dude, these rats are fucking healthy. Like, they look good. Like, I was even getting these weird, like, sheep looking ones and shit. I don't know. There was just like a lot going on. I was breeding ASFs. I just took a lot of pride on being clean with these rodents. And I felt like that's why they took off for me. Like, I had no problem breeding rodents. Like, they were just right out the gate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I started breeding them for colors too. I mean, because my colony started with a few different colored mice, and I was popping out all these weird colors, and and silkies, and even tri-colored mice, and I just started, breeding them for traits, and then before I know it, I'm like selectively breeding mice.
Now you've only, for the most part, like you only feed the mice that you breed. You're not buying mice from other companies, is that right?
I'm still buying adult frozen mice.
And who do you go through? I'm curious.
I have a couple of guys that I deal with here, so.
Well, let me tell you one thing that's, I'm not going to say the name of the company at all. I'm just curious if this is something that you've heard. But like certain mice, like, I don't know if it's what they're being bred with, but certain mice that are coming in and like killing people's snakes.
Well, you know, I'm not going to name specific places either.
Right.
All the mice that I get here come from labs that I know are here in New York. So they're bred here, and they're all what's called knockout mice. They're bred for specific traits that have to do with cancer. So all of the mice they're not treated for, you know, things. They're not injected or topically treated. They're bred specifically for traits, and the ones that don't have the trait get whacked. So those are the ones that I buy. The reason being, a lot of the commercial mice sellers buy mice from China. Now,
Wow.
I don't trust mice from China. So it's like,
so they're coming already frozen from China is what you're saying.
yeah, they're buying frozen mice from China. A lot of the big frozen mouse dealers are buying frozen mice from China. So again, I'm not going to name names, but I just don't trust it. You know, your friends, you know, Mark Bailey, he breeds a lot of mice and rats.
Boy, yeah.
And, you know, he's got American-made homegrown mice and rats, and he's making money on them because they're hard to get. You know, those are real hard to get. I would recommend, if you're, you know, your listeners out there, breed your own mice and rats, and find out where they're coming from. You know, they got to tell you. They can't say no. They're right here in America. If they come from China, they got to tell you.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. There was a couple incidents of people having this problem where they fed a certain amount of snakes, mice from a certain batch, and they died.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like, you know, digged a little further, and I'm like, where are these people getting their mice from? And all they said was it's from a third party. They won't declare where it actually comes from. It's just coming from somebody else.
I'll bet they're coming from China. Now
that's scary. Like, that's like, whoa. And when I found that out, I was like, wait, you don't breed your own mice? So that just like, and that opened my eyes, like, how many other rodent breeders are out there selling rodents that aren't their rodents?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They're just a bunch of third party fucking rodent sellers. And
well, you know,
that's scary.
You got to understand. And I'm sure a guy like Mark Bailey and myself and you would understand what it takes to make a mouse. You know, after all is said and done, for me to raise a mouse to adulthood is a lot more than what you're buying them for. You know, time, money, food, shavings. So a lot of the mice that are in the pet industry now, the frozen ones, are surplus laboratory mice. Now, make sure they're from laboratories that are here in the U.S. You don't want to get them from laboratories in China, because who knows what they did to them in China. They're not going to tell you. But in the U.S., your chances are they'll probably be pretty good.
I didn't even know that was even a thing. Mice from China. That's scary.
Yeah.
I don't even want to think about it. Fuck. God.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But it's the reality of it. Like, you know, how do you think I felt when I was talking to my you know, talking to people I'm close with where this is happening to them? And I'm just like, whoa, what the fuck? And then I have some people saying, well, I'm never going to feed a black mice to my snakes ever again. Or like,
meanwhile, you know, the black mice for me are the ones that I know are the lab mice that are knockout mice, because those are the ones they use, at least in my demographic, you know?
Right. So, I mean, would you say overall any advice that you have for somebody who's getting into breeding their own rodents would just be the staying on top of the cleanliness? Was that be rule number one, you would say?
Yeah. Well, with mice, mice are social creatures, so you can't mix and match them. Right. Meaning, if you start a bunch of hoppers, a male and 4 females, you cannot add another female.
That's
or
the
a
family.
male.
Yeah, right. That's the family, right?
That's the group. They're done forever.
Right.
Like if one female dies 3 months in, you can't add another one in. They're now 1.3. They're not 1.4 anymore. So that's one, you know, secret, so to speak. Cleanliness. I clean them twice a week. I clean their shavings twice a week, and they always have food and water. And that's all I do. I take the hoppers out when they're weaned, and they get, you know, fed off or frozen, either one, depending on how many I need.
Right.
And so this way the tubs aren't really crowded, because they could get crowded if you leave too many hoppers in there. because a female could have, 10 babies plus. Each one has them all at the same time. That could be 40 babies, almost 50 babies. If they're all hoppers in there, it's going to get dirty quick. So you got to stay on top of it. It's a lot of work. It's twice a week,
So we're going to bridge this topic into something else we should be on top of. And you've been in this game for quite a while, man. There was kind of a bit of a stir earlier this year about, you understand it's more than about breeders working with snakes. You have people who don't want to breed, but they have a YouTube and they want to fucking show people how they take care of their pet tubers. They're called pet tubers. There was a big scare of Nido, fucking people getting snakes from breeders with Nido and all this other scares that's just going down the list. How much familiarness or how much experience have you had working with Nido or IBD or anything like that coming to your collection?
I personally haven't had an issue with it. Now, I also keep a very closed facility.
Okay.
The one thing that I say to a lot of people, and I mentioned it in my book too, is that you're asking for trouble if you're a person who wants to compile a collection of snakes fast. And especially if you're buying them from many different places, you're asking for trouble. Because there's many viruses and diseases that are floating out there that, for example, your snakes in your facility are living with viruses and pathogens that they're fine with. But if they expose those viruses or pathogens to a snake that's not used to them, they could be injurious to another bloodline of snake and vice versa. So I always tell people, keep your collection mite free, because the mites will carry that pathogen throughout your whole collection. There'll be little injectors injecting it, sucking blood from one and going to another. So like whenever I do a reptile show, I bring a can of bed bug spray and I spray my whole table and my floor and my whole area. And if somebody's near me that has bugs, I tell them, you got to move your bugs. I'm going to be spraying this area.
They're going to die.
Yeah, they're just going to die. So, and I spray down my boxes, the outside of the boxes, so nothing gets in them. I am so cognizant and so paranoid over getting mites because I never want mites in my collection. So the other way to avoid it is I don't take anything into my building. Nothing comes into my building other than what I produce. If I get snakes that I want for myself, I quarantine them in my house for a year or 6 months. Or I only buy snakes from my friends, people that I know.
Right.
I'm fortunate that I know a lot of people, but I only buy snakes from people I know and trust. So I don't take anything wild caught and bring it into my building. That's for sure.
When was the last time you did?
I can't remember the last time I got a wild caught snake, to be honest with you. Yeah. I mean, 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And let me ask you, since we're talking about imports, what's your take on the import game now? I mean, anyone out there who because for instance, maybe, boas, there's too many awesome boas in here I feel like to have to worry about that, but like green trees and shit like that, people who are like sought after for shit that they can't get their hands on, and they want to go the import route. What do you say to that?
Well, I have the 50% rule.
Right.
If you're going to get into wild caught stuff, 50% of them will die.
And that's on a good day.
Well, if you know what you're doing, like me,
right?
Or
yeah.
Like chondros, 50% of them are going to die.
Yeah.
Same with Amazon. Well, Amazon tree boas or the emerald tree boas, same thing. 50% of them are going to die, and that's if you know what you're doing. So, but here's the problem. I've always been an advocate of wild caught animals because I started a lot of my stuff with wild caught animals many, many years ago. But I'm at the point now where I don't need to buy the wild caught stuff. And if I wanted to get into something, again, I would quarantine it and keep it separate for a long time just to see how it does. But my greatest fear, and I see it coming, is that less and less of these animals are coming into the country every year simply because the demand isn't as much for them. Even ball pythons, think about it. At one point in the 90s and 2000s, millions Well, no, hundreds of thousands of ball pythons are coming out of Africa. They're not anymore because enough are being born here, which is a good thing. You know,
I was just talking to Mark earlier today. I was telling you, and he was telling me how the quota, or like the minimum, if you wanted to import ball pythons back in the day, the minimum you could get were like 2,000. Like that was the minimum, and for the most part, people were bringing in, they were coming in by the thousands, like nothing.
Well, my brother and I were doing it in the early 90s. The minimum was 10,000. So we were bringing in 10,000. Wow. And we were selling, 1,000 lots to guys that we knew just because we couldn't handle that many. So we would pre-sell a bunch of 1,000 lots just to get rid of them, almost at cost. And then I would weed through them and try and find weird shit, and then we'd go from there. But yeah, there was a time when it was big numbers coming in, big numbers. That's what's going to happen with Boas too. Yeah, you're going to see no more wild caught Boas come in because, number one, the wholesalers, the dealers down in South America that are sending them out are becoming extinct. They're all old guys. There's no young guy who's in Suriname or Guyana or Peru sending Boas to Tom Crutchfield or Lloyd Lemke anymore. It doesn't happen.
Right. The only person I've heard of that's even doing anything remotely to that, and I don't even know if it's happening now, was Quetzal down in Costa Rica. He was sending some emeralds, but I don't. That's not happening anymore either. I don't think so.
No,
it's crazy. Now I'm gonna go ahead and, before we get into the last wrap-up question of the episode, I gotta ask you, man. Music's a big part of my life. I DJ'd for 10 years, produced. Was never really good at playing an instrument. Like I got good at playing the guitar for like a year, and then my mom sold my guitar. I don't know why she did that, but I admire a musician. My uncles played in bands. Obviously I see a good collection of looks like bass. Are those all bass guitars behind you? Or
yeah, it's mostly basses back there. Yeah.
So what's the story, man? How does music relate to your life?
Well, I was a music major in college.
Wow, awesome.
So
beautiful.
I've been playing guitar since I'm 12, and I play bass, and I play bass now. I played in a jazz trio, and now I play in a Allman Brothers cover band.
Nice. Oh, bitchin'.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up, what were some of the music like that you kind of were inspired by? Like, what was some of the maybe songs that you covered or tried to cover or whatnot growing up?
Well, growing up in the 80s, I was a long-haired, metalhead.
Yeah,
I was into Metallica and Slayer, and I was into the heavy hard rock stuff. But I was also into because I was a musician, I was into jazz, and I was really into the Allman Brothers when I was a kid, and I loved Led Zeppelin when I was young, and so
I'm a big step head right here.
So as a kid in high school, I was in a band that we did Judas Priest, Kiss.
Oh, nice.
Metallica. We did Iron Maiden. So, and as I got older, I went to college for music. I played classical guitar in college, and and I always played bass just for fun. My brother had a bass when I was a kid, and he never used it, so I would go to, kids would be saying, oh, we're going to have a jam session one night. And I'd bring my bass because there was no bass player there ever. So I would get to play all night instead of waiting online like an asshole with a guitar. It never gets up there because there's too many clowns wanting to play.
Right. Man, I got to tell you, the things that I love most in life stems from my family, that stuff that I learned from my family in the East Coast. Like my mom's family, like my mom's brothers, they're all from Pennsylvania and, Philly and whatnot. And, they brought music into my life. I never saw live jam sessions until I flew back east and would see my uncles. Like my uncle put his cigarette on the end of his fender and just rip. I remember just seeing that, thinking that was so fucking cool. Like literally one of the coolest things I remember seeing is seeing my uncle put his cigarette there and just jam. And I was like, man, that is the coolest thing ever. And then obviously the Reptiles too, man. Like I have so much of the East Coast that inside of me, even though I'm from the West Coast. And I feel like that's my biggest reason why I love visiting the East Coast, man. I've got a lot of it in me. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a wrap-up question for you before we get into some hot seat questions here, Vince. Being the fact that you are 30 years deep, right? We didn't say 40, did we? I don't want to overdo it. How many years did you say you're in?
35. Well, 37.
37. Respect. 37 years deep into this game. How is your holdback strategy at this point? Like when it comes to you having your boa projects, you know, the ones that have been your pillars growing up throughout this whole time. How do you really like look at your holdbacks? I mean, is it all about holding back as many as you possibly can still? Do you just need one or two? How is the holdback game for you?
I hold back a pair or two of every litter. So I hold back a lot of stuff just to see what it's going to look like. And especially if stuff pops out, you know, there's some litters where nothing pops out, like the locality stuff. They're all little carbon copies of each other. So there's not really too many pop-outs.
Right.
So I may just pick something that maybe looks a little different or maybe a little lighter or darker. I don't know. But like in the blood boa stuff, if something's really red right out of the gate, I put a little star on it and that stays behind for a while just to see what it turns into. But I try to keep a pair or two out of every litter that I make. So.
And then how often are you letting go of like retired breeders? I mean, is that every year or is it not? Do you hold on to them till they're done or how's that work?
I don't sell retired breeders ever. So
they just write it out with you basically.
They write it out with me. Yeah. To the end.
That's sick.
Yeah. I don't want to, you know, I could easily sell some snakes that I would consider as retired breeders. Mm-hmm. But, you know, here's the thing. I know they're done. Why would I sell them? You know, it's I'm going to sell them to somebody who thinks they're going to breed them and they're not going to get much out of them. And then I look like the asshole. So, you know, a boa, you know, boa gets past a certain point and they're done, you know.
Is there an age when that happens from your experience? Or when are
you there is an age. There is an age, you know. Boas will live a long time. The longest I had a boa was 28 years. The longest I had a ball python was 30. I had it for 35 years, but it was like 10 years old when I got it.
Holy shit.
So it was 45 and it died last year, but I have all of its offspring for many, 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 many years. But the boas, for me, if they get, you know, if it's imperator and once they get past like 12 years, they're done, especially if they've been producing litters. Constrictor will live longer, the true red tails, because they don't breed till they're older, 7, 8, 9 years old, maybe 10, they'll stop breeding.
Right.
So, you know, for me, if they're past 12, 14 years, they're done. They're not going to really do much for me. But, you know, I'm sure there's people out there that say, oh, I had a 30-year-old boa that had a litter of babies. That definitely will happen. I'm not saying it's not. But if you're putting them into a breeding regimen where you're breeding them every year or two, they're not going to last that long.
I didn't ask you this. I forgot. I'm sorry. But, you know, you getting slugs every litter, should that be happening? Or do you have 100% success rate with litters?
No, if a female is giving you slugs, there's something wrong. Either she's not thermoregulating properly or the male's in at the wrong time. You know, I had a female this year that gave me slugs like 2 years in a row. And the male was in the right time and he was a proven breeder. I'm confident that female is just not a good breeder. You know, I'm confident that something's up.
Well, right on. Vince, this has been an amazing episode, man. A lot of knowledge, a lot of information. I appreciate you so much. We have hot seat questions though, so you're not out of the loop just yet, okay? You okay with these hot seat questions, Vince?
No, I'll be good.
That's what I like to hear. All right, Vince. So here we go. Hot seat questions coming in hot. Do your best to not explain your answers. That's the whole point of this. Let's just go and get these answers in, all right?
All right.
Ready? Here we go, Vin. Hot seat questions. Let's go. Frozen thought or live?
Both.
You had to pick one. Which one would it be? There's no choice. Like you have to pick one or the other.
Fresh killed.
Fresh killed. So we'll go frozen thought. A cut or no cut?
What do you mean by that?
Would you cut an egg or would you never cut an egg?
Oh, I don't cut eggs.
Okay. So even if it's day 60, let's say, for instance, a ball python clutch, nothing's pipping.
You don't cut eggs.
Don't cut eggs.
I want to do a video of me with a pair of scissors acting like I'm going to cut something. And then they say, why are you cutting eggs? Don't cut your eggs.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay, red chondro or yellow chondro?
Yellow.
Pre-first shed meal or post-first shed meal?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, some people believe in getting a meal in like a hatchling before its first shed.
Never. No, you have to wait till they shed.
All right. Yay imports or boo imports?
Yay. I wouldn't be where I am today without them.
One reptile you would import anywhere around the world, doesn't matter what it is, what would it be?
Oh. I don't know.
Anything. Like, let's say like the room didn't matter, you had all the space in the world. Like, let's just like kind of like imagine.
I would say, I really dig those shingleback skinks.
Oh, those are awesome.
Yeah.
Those are like out of a fucking cartoon or something. I love those.
Yeah.
What about one import nobody should ever import ever? Like, leave it alone.
Monkeys. No.
I mean, for reals, leave those alone for sure. God bless the monkeys.
But believe it or not, Boas, leave them alone. We don't need any more.
To spray a reptile or snake, or to not spray a snake? Miss.
With water?
Water. Mm-hmm.
You can spray them. They like it.
Yay sports or boo sports?
Sports?
Mm-hmm.
Like in football and baseball?
Yeah. Yay or boo?
I don't watch sports. Boo.
Yay alcohol or boo alcohol?
Boo alcohol. It's poison.
Steak or fish?
I like fish better.
Nice. Favorite fish?
For me, sea bass here in Long Island.
Ooh, like white sea bass?
No, I don't know what they're just called sea bass. They're black though.
Yeah, we have white and black out here in San Diego. Awesome. Metallica or AC/DC?
Metallica.
All right. West Coast rap or East Coast rap?
It'd have to be East Coast, man.
All right, respect. Little word association. First thing to come to mind. Milk.
A baby.
Substrate.
I like using pine shaving.
FedEx shipping.
I use FedEx.
Reptile shows.
I don't like that the flea market mentality, but I really like the Tinley shows, the NARBC. I like that they feel like you're at a Comic-Con. There's a lot going on. There's YouTubers. There's
fun.
Breeders. There's old school. There's new school. So yeah, that show I like, but there's plenty of other shows I don't like.
First time boa breeder.
What about it?
Well, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I don't know.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Okay, perfect. Instagram trolls.
So what?
Instagram trolls. Do you know what Instagram trolls are?
Yeah, I do. Do I like them? Do I not like them? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's a word association. What does this make you think when you think of it? You know what I mean? Like, first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this word.
Oh, I think of like a 12-year-old kid playing on Instagram, thinks he knows it all.
Okay, if you had to get rid of one platform forever, Vince, and I mean forever, this is an important one. Are you going to get rid of Instagram or are you going to get rid of Facebook? Which one has to go?
Facebook.
Woo! I love it. And I know you're highly respected on Facebook, but that's the truth. And the truth is undisputed. Hot seat questions in the books. Vince, what an amazing episode. We had over 90 people watching at one point. We have over 90 likes. Yeah, this was a great episode. What do you have to say to everyone out here who enjoyed this episode, but more importantly, supporting you and really inspired by all your work? What do you have to say to everyone out there?
Well, I have to say that I appreciate the people that do, purchase animals from me. There's a lot of nice people out there that make the transactions easy and friendly, which I really enjoy. Because every once in a while, there's one dickhead. But I got to be honest, they're few and far between. And most of the people that I've met through the shows and through the shows like this, reptile shows and online shows, have been really cool people that are really into it and they're passionate about the animals. So I appreciate that for sure.
Now, since Instagram is king, as we just said, best way for anyone to maybe be on top of what you have for sale, would that be to follow you on Instagram, or what's the best way that people can stay on top of what you're going to be having available here?
Yeah, definitely. Instagram. I post my ads on Instagram and on my Facebook page. So either one, I post them simultaneously. So they pop up at the same time.
Okay. Awesome. Well, listen, Vince, I'm pretty sure you're going to be back here at someday for another round here on Trap Talk. I got to say thank you so much for this legendary episode, but that's a wrap for Vince Russo, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, thank you so much, Vince. Have a good night. Me, man. I'll see you at the next show. You're gonna be at Tinley, or what's your?
Yeah, I'll be at Tinley in October. Yeah.
Okay, I'll come say hi to you, man. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thanks, man.
See you later, Vince.
Take it easy.
What a guy. What an episode. Thank you so much, everyone who tapped in for this legendary Trap Talk. Historical shit going down to the books. This is nuts, literally. I mean, I've been fantasizing about wanting to bring Vince onto the show for a long time. I think since Cusco had him on the show. And again, shout out to Brian Cusco. Brian Cusco is literally the guy who started doing interviews where I saw that I want this to be a part of my life. So I got to say thank you so much to my boy Brian Cusco, who was just in the building earlier today. And appreciate you out there. If this was your first time tapping in, if you like to hear more information from people who've been breeding reptiles and keeping them for year after year, this is the right place to be. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you're on top of every single podcast I put out here on this channel, and lots to look forward to for the rest of this week. I got to tell you right now, we have a really good heavy hitter in the building this Sunday for my Holy Lizard session, because you guys, I know I have segments throughout the week, right? So Sunday, we have a female breeder. Her name's Casey out of Zion Hills Exotics, going down this Sunday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Let's go. It's going to be an amazing time with an amazing keeper. I can't wait, man. Female keepers is where it's at. Let's go. I love bringing female keepers to the platform. Love hearing why they work with what they work with. And look what she has in her hands, man. A fucking real dragon. We're dealing with a dragon trainer. And can't wait to get to know more about Casey. So if you want to tap in about her projects and what she has going on, and go down to the link below. Set your reminder, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Also, don't forget, Will Morris's facility tours going down tomorrow as well. So what you have to do is, if you want to watch this, you want to go over to the Snake Trap Sessions Vlogs YouTube channel, set your reminder. It's going down tomorrow morning. Okay, it's going to be going down. It's going to be sick. I cannot wait. I went ahead and showed some things that Will has not showed to anyone. So it's going to be something you don't want to miss. Make sure you go follow me on Instagram if you want to know what I have going on more than the podcast stuff. A couple of things you can do. Go follow me on Instagram, MJ Exotics Cartel with an A, not an E. And then go give the podcast's Instagram page a follow as well. Last but not least, I got to say shout out to my Patreon members. If you want to support this channel more than a like, more than a subscription, best thing you do is go down to the link, very first top link, and click the Trap Talk Patreon family. Become a part of the family. Join the Discord, tap in with us. Let us know what you're passionate about. Share your projects. You got something for sale? Come sell it. You want to buy something? Come buy it. It all goes down on the Trap Talk Patreon family. So join, okay? And I got to say, Patreon members, be ready, because I'm dropping a vlog strictly for you guys this week, and that's how to fix a prolapse like a motherfucking G. All right, guys, I'm out. Have a good night. Be ready, because it's going to go down this Sunday. And again, thank you, Vin Russo, for dropping some fucking serious heat on such a legendary night for my Trap Talk trappers in the motherfucking building. But I'm out.